Jordan Fox. I started, so in college, I was actually an accounting major. So I'll take it back there. Growing up, my dad was in the stock market. My grandfather was in the stock market. I always believed I would be in the financial world, trading stocks or being a financial advisor or wealth management advisor. Just didn't really know what it was exactly. Always loved dealing with numbers. And then the recession hit in '08, right before I went to college. So my mom, who, my best friend, in, always kind of guided me in life. I leaned on her for what should I do when I go to college, and she recommended accounting. So I went to Syracuse, their business school, did accounting for 4 years, was going for my CPA, got my master's in the city at Yeshiva University, Cy Sims Business School, and then uh, basically decided while sitting for the CPA, and I actually also, to add to that, had a job with Ernst& Young, one of the big four accounting firms. And right before I started sitting for the CPA, I would wake up and I was just like angry at the world. I was kind of like miserable, and I was like, why am I like this? There's no reason. I'm 22 years old, living in Manhattan. Like, why am I feeling this way? And I realized it was because I was pursuing something that I really didn't feel that passionate about. It wasn't really kind of like a dream of mine. And for me, I always feel like if whatever it is in life, I need to have a dream or a goal that I need to obtain. And, sometimes you don't know what that is, but you can put yourself sort of down the right path and hope that it, comes to life somehow, some way. And at that moment, this was back in 2014, I decided to step away from accounting and then get involved in social media. The reason why wanted to get involved in social media was because social media was just starting. It was brand new. And, taking a step back to what I was talking about, my dad and my grandfather actually started in the stock market world, the stock exchange, when it first came to life, right? When it first started back in the day. And him taking that risk was the best thing that ever happened to my family. Him taking that risk allowed him to kind of gain his fortunes, build up kind of his empire for my family, where, took care of his three daughters, his six grandkids. And that's kind of something that I always looked up to and was, I admired. So, and also from a strategic standpoint, right? If you're the first in, you're probably going to have an advantage versus the people who are, coming in later,
Right.
at a later date. So at that point, I basically decided I wanted to, look into social media and get involved in social media. And at this time, like Facebook didn't really have Business Manager, which it was called Power Editor back then. These companies really didn't have the advertising tools. They were starting with like boosting posts, and it was just really to get engagement with followers. It wasn't anything where it had to do with like business objectives. And at that time, I was at a best friend's birthday party, and I was talking to this girl on the couch who I went to high school with, and I haven't seen her in like 4 or 5 years. And we started just chatting about what I was up to, what I was doing, and I told her I wanted to get involved in social. And she's like, actually, a friend of mine from college works at a company. He's in social media. Let me introduce you. Next day, she introduced us, sent that kid my resume. And then the following day, he actually sent in my resume, got a response from their company. It was called Social Code, where I ended up working. Went through that interview process and just basically, as I say, just stepped in shit. Like seeing that girl that day, having that conversation with her, then getting in through my buddy Brad. I ended up working at a company, Social Code, at that time, who had direct access. They were alpha partners with Facebook. The owner of their company was the daughter of the chairman of the board of Facebook, Don Graham. So we were really very tight with the Facebook reps, and we were very close to what they were building in Power Editor. So with my numbers background, I came in doing more of the operations, the advertising buying, and the strategy behind the ads. And that in itself built my entire foundation that I still lean on today.
Right.
I got to learn about how to actually build an advertising tool, and not just an advertising tool, but the best advertising tool, which is Facebook's. Everyone till this day is going to continue to try to mimic what they're doing. And they've just, they have so many engineers on it that they're just taking it to the next level, and it'll be so hard for anyone to kind of catch up. So Social Code kind of gave me that paid social background. From there, I ended up going to Vayner Media to join a bunch of my teammates that actually were at Social Code and then went to Vayner. Vayner Media was a creative only shop. And then Gary wanted to start a full service company. So he wanted to add the media portion to the business, and he kind of poached my old boss, Jeff Nicholson. And Jeff was the guy who hired me at Social Code. Forever grateful for what he's done for me in my career. And then went over to Vayner to kind of help them in their media department and really trying to build that business. At Vayner, I was able to not just handle, I didn't want to necessarily pigeonhole myself in paid social. I wanted to kind of learn the whole landscape so I can think of things from a bigger business perspective for later in life. It was kind of like my next building block. So got involved in influencer marketing, innovation, so AR, VR, AI, e-commerce, understanding how to build, shops and the analytics behind it, the equations that go into it. Shout out to, my buddy Sabir, who worked at Vayner, one of the smartest guys I've ever met. I think I mentioned influencer marketing, the creative side of the business. So project management, really truly understanding like, what does it take to create a commercial,
Hmm.
scripts and creative concepts and copywriters and graphic designers and this whole team that has to put this one deck together. And then once you actually get that passed, the production of it, the editing of it. So all of that just allowed me to kind of round out my digital landscape on like the understanding of the digital landscape and how to kind of leverage all these different levers or avenues to benefit a business for whatever their objectives are. From Vayner, ended up starting my own company. At 26, I was very ambitious. Always wanted to run my own thing, and at that point, I was in the agency world for 3 years, 3.5 years, and I was like, you know what, it's time for me to just do it on my own. I really don't enjoy the machine that agencies are. I was like, I want to do it on my schedule the way I, want to do it at the end of the day and be my own boss. And then 3 months into starting my company, I actually got the opportunity to have Alicia Keys as my first client.
Not
So,
bad.
not a bad first client, right? So, I worked for her. That interview process, man, that was brutal. That was a 9 round interview process, and I wasn't in the music industry. So it was, their outlook on it was I was the guy that was going to check all the boxes. It wasn't just musician anymore. My goal for her, and I have Gary to thank because I was watching what he was building with Gary V
Hmm.
when I was at VaynerMedia. Yeah, I was doing my job, but a lot of the time I tell people I was networking there. I was building real
Right.
relationships. And then I was also watching what Gary was building. I was keeping a very close eye on it because I understood that that was the future. This personal brand, you as a you as an individual become a media company.
Yep.
How is he building that? What is his approach? And then how is he structuring his team? What's the framework? So I was always keeping a close eye on that and ear to the ground of just my buddies who are on that team. And with that, I wanted to do it for Alicia. I was like, she's more of a legacy brand at this time. The younger generation, Gen Z, don't really know her music that well, and try to create more of a timeless brand. So I ended up, working for her through my company MMP for the first 3 months, and then she actually hired me to her management team, where I was one of about 6 or 7 people on her management team to run, her entire business, her entire brand. And I was the head of digital strategy for her. At that time, I put my business to the side, focused full time on her, worked alongside her philanthropy advisor, who's taught me a lot. His name is Diwash. Her publicist, her president, Alicia herself, her music manager, Johnny Wright, who, has managed the cream of the crop. He also was on Making the Band. He was with that, he created that show with Diddy back in the day with O Town. Shout out O Town. Uh, you know, it was an amazing experience because everything had to get filtered through me when it was going to social, right?
Okay.
I needed to make sure everything laddered up for her brand to who she was as a person, right? Don't want to be promotional. She's a very unique individual, extremely talented, and you got to make sure that you're doing these things correctly. So, philanthropy. I just learned so much more. I learned the digital space, but now I was able to tie it into philanthropy, right? I was
Hmm.
able to tie it into music, streaming. I managed, at that time, I also managed her creative team in house as well as her agency. So, it was a lot of work, but it just put me in the inside. I just was on the inside of a brand that had over 80 million followers, something that I was able to see for the first time. Gary had that following, but like Alicia Keys is, she's royalty in the music world. And she, that whole time that I was there, it really helped me not only just, it benefited me in ways that I learned later on where, her creativeness, she was so spiritual that I was always kind of a type A person. She opened up my creative doors. It opened up my eyes into the world of creatives. How do you process these things? How do you think about the spirits? Like, I think that, with retrograde, things like that, that I didn't really truly understand beforehand. And then I looked into them. I was like, there's a higher power above, there's a higher energy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm religious, I'm Jewish, I believe in God and things like that, but I never thought about it that way
Right.
before, especially in business. And she opened up my creative pores, which, is my next transition. I ended up leaving working for her because what I learned is, the amount of money and the processes and resources you got to put into building something like that at that time wasn't necessarily a priority for her. Her music was always number one. And she's at a level that, of course she could do whatever she wants and she should. But for me, I kind of had different goals.
Yeah.
I realized that, if she doesn't really truly understand how much it will take to build this right to that next level and take that step to become more of a timeless brand, how many other people out there don't know this
Mm-hmm.
and understand it? And, I've been in closed doors at Vayner and Social Code, the top agencies in their space, where you're around people that know everything you know. So you always feel as if, everyone knows it. But once you walk out those doors, you realize your skill set's actually needed. And a lot of people can learn from you
Yeah.
and can benefit from it. So I ended up leaving Alicia at the end of 2018, started MMP up again
Okay.
after a 3 opening. So I still had, business up, but it was, I wasn't really focused on it. And then restarted it, rebooted it back in January of 2019. And so what MMP, name of the company, just so you know, is MMP Digital. It stands for Make Me Proud, which, I've mentioned earlier. My dad passed when I was 12 years old. My grandfather stepped into that father figure role for me. And whatever I did in life, I wanted to make him proud, which is what MMP stands for. And
Right.
he would always say to me, MMP me, whatever it was when it came to my high school varsity basketball games, whether it was an exam that I was taking the next day, the SATs, taking a girl out on a date, just MMP me, right? And that to
Yeah.
me meant hold yourself to the highest standard, right? You be classy, you treat people with respect, you treat them with kindness, and you do things ultimately the right way. Because if you don't, I'm going to be mad at you, right? And mad at myself. I never wanted to let him down,
Yeah.
because of what he gave me and what he's provided for me without me asking, right?
Mm-hmm.
He just would give. I was his family. So at the end of the day, he just wanted to give, give, give. And I was always grateful for that. So, for me, MMP Digital is obviously a company, but for me, it had to be more than that. It had to be something that touched me and pushed me to never be complacent and kind of take me to the highest standards. And make sure my work is obviously following that, and also my partners.
Yeah.
Into the business now, MMP Digital is a full service business. So, what I learned at Vayner Media is you need to be able to service a brand or an individual or a company today across the board, whether that's media, whether that is creative. And, everything's connected today. So, your media, the metrics that you're learning and the insights that you're gaining will help you on the creative side of the business, and you'll gain more efficiencies. You'll be more focused on your production and, different scripts and individuals that you're putting in it, whether it's product shots versus imagery versus lifestyle versus
Mm-hmm.
video. There's so many different variables and factors that come into play. It allows you to kind of plan ahead and optimize and really just spend that money more efficiently. And everything's tied together today, right? And it's so important that there's a through line. And I believe with full service and being able to oversee things, you'll be able to kind of connect those dots. Next is we're freelance only. So we're full service, freelance only business. And honestly, today is a perfect time to kind of talk about this because there are so many companies right now that have sent their home, employees home
Yep.
to work from home across the country, like LinkedIn, Google, all these large companies. And all my friends are working from home this week. And not only just a week, but for the rest of the month.
Right.
And I'm very bullish on freelance only because I believe you should be able to work from where you want, when you want, and I believe that you need to feel like you're in control of your life and your schedule.
Mhm.
And I feel like when people work at companies and businesses, um, as an employee, they feel like they're obligated to be in that office by 9 a.m. Oh, what is he doing
Hold
now?
on.
Oh,
This is his circus. Just over back.
got it, man.
So I'm sitting here listening to him. Oh, jeez. Listening to him play with stuff and no idea what he's doing here. And then I see this bottle come flying out of the bathroom.
Oh no.
And I walk in there and I see this ripped open. Like out of all the
Okay,
things you
first
could
of
have found.
all the things, not the quality of life.
Yeah.
All right, come on, Griffey, do better than that.
Oh man, let him out one time. Come on. Luckily, neither
That's
calf was open, but
that's so that's hilarious. The
oh,
Clorox
man.
wipes of all things. It's like he knows.
Right?
He's watching. Watching the news with you at night.
Absolutely. Just try to wash his hands, keep clean,
He's
staying
got his
corona
own Twitter
safe.
account. He's got his burner.
That's right.
The whole doggy world.
Oh man. Well, this
Oh
this
yeah.
has been an adventure testing this out with him. It's funny because I shot a documentary yesterday where I was interviewing a guy on here in the office, and that was the first time I've ever had to try to do like an interview or anything with him around, and he was perfect. He just slept the whole time. So I'm thinking, all right, like we're one for one there. Maybe he'll be good on the podcast. He's just going bonkers right now. He is
I'll
not
take the
happy.
pain. My grandfather used to call me home alone because I was a menace as a child. I was just
Yeah,
very ruckus. I locked my babysitter in my basement at 3 years old with a broom, like one of those locks on top of the door. I just
yeah.
like pushed the broom. I was a menace as a kid, so I think it's just my energy coming out, and Griffey's getting a little excited. And
There you
you know what?
go.
Let me show you what I can do.
Feeling it. Just trying to show off, man.
I love it.
Oh
Pups are the
man.
best, man. It's always important. I'm a big fan of dogs.
This is my
Um,
first dog. We had a cat as a kid, like until I was like 12. But this is the next level, like next level child, basically. Sorry about that, man. It looks like he's gonna
no,
be good now. He's looks like
so
he's
yeah, no,
thinks I'm mad at him.
all good. Back to the freelance only piece. So,
There you go.
as I said, I'm very bullish on freelance. I worked at agencies and I saw how, leadership kind of viewed your work and who you were as a professional based on like what time you came in and when you left. Wasn't necessarily about the quality of work, what you were accomplishing in that time you were there, how efficient you were. It was about the longevity and the duration of time when you were there. And I just felt to myself, I'm like, that's not fair. That's not right. I've always been someone who'd rather spend more time, be zoned in, and be more efficient for 4 hours than just sit around for 8 and kind of just half-ass things,
Yeah,
right? And that to me was like there was just a disconnect there. I was like, if you want people to actually create better work, you need to also let them live their life the way they want to live it because they need to be happy. And I think a lot of mental health and anxiety and stress and pressure at these jobs that a lot of people are feeling today sort of comes from that. And that mentality of you need to be the last person out of the office, first person in, last person out. And I get it from your early years in, right, your first, second years. But then when you have a family, you have kids. I was lucky enough, and the reason why I'm very bullish on this again is I had a dad who was home at 3 o'clock. My mom was home at 3 o'clock.
hmm.
They were in my life when I came home from school,
Well,
whether
yeah,
that was going to, my dad taking me to pitching lessons, basketball practice, whatever it was, we had time together. And I was raised by my parents. I wasn't
right.
raised by anyone else, not a nanny or anything like that. And that to me is extremely important. And I've known, I went to Syracuse University, and there are a lot of wealthy kids that go there. And what I saw there was, yeah, they're very wealthy, but a lot of their parents were never home. They were neglected as kids, and I noticed that they were just looking for attention, and there were a lot of insecurities there because they were never home, and they were raised by, like, their nanny or housekeeper, and or even their grandmother, and um, for me, it showed me, and I learned at a young age, I mean 21, that how important it was for your family to be around and to be taking care of you. Because one line that I always talk about with my mom is, you can't teach someone to love.
Hmm.
It's in you. It has to come from within you. You need to see it. So, like, my mom's my role model. I see it. I watch it through her actions, her everyday values. It's not something that can be taught. And it just, I saw that at a young age, and I was like, I don't want to be one of those people. Yes, I want to be successful. I want to be wealthy. I want to be able to give my family everything that they can have. My son, I want, or my daughter, whatever my kids are, boy or girl, right? But whatever is to come, I want to be able to provide them with not just money and a great lifestyle, but with love and an understanding of, for themselves, to build a family and build a future for themselves.
Yeah.
And how important that is. Um, so freelance, to me, it allows people to do that, and I think the business models today are kind of broken where, as I said, you don't need to go into the office. You can be working from, for example, for my business, I have a paid media manager who worked from India. He's now in Peru and moving to Argentina, and he's running, a very large business's paid media account for 3 brands and other brands that I work on, and it's just sort of shown me that this business model works.
Hmm.
It's just that people aren't ready to test it, and I think that's the disconnect between upper management and the junior and lower staff employees. It's a different generation. They're not speaking the language of the actual people who are doing the work on the day-to-day basis to keep the business running.
Right.
And I think that disconnect, that tide's going to turn at some point, and that is why I brought up today. It's like, these businesses that are asking their employees to work from home for the rest of the month, the ones that already have you can work remotely 4 days a week, or sorry, not 4 days, 4 days a month, right? Every Friday you can work from home. The ones that have implemented sort of this remote working, even on a week to week basis, they're going to be better prepared and better off than the company that's all against it, right?
Hmm.
You can't work from home. You have to come into the office. And now in this moment, their hands are tied. They
Yeah.
can't ask their employees to come in. It's just wrong. You can't. And for those people that haven't implemented that remote working or freelance mentality, they're going to be losing to their competition. And right now, they're probably freaking out, making sure that their business doesn't flip upside down,
Yeah.
because they don't have the processes in place, they don't have the communication lines in place. You need to have those things in place in order for your business to run. And I think with where we're headed, it's so important to implement that. It doesn't have to be, for my business, I'm a believer in full, just freelance only. I don't want people coming to an office. I want you to be able to work from where you want. But I also understand, the importance of being in a meeting with someone face to face. So I'm not saying you have to go all in as a company, but you also need to understand that times are changing, and you do need to understand and adjust that freelance is here to stay.
Right.
And it also will create, as I said, just a better, I think, overall lifestyle.
Hmm.
So that was a lot on freelance only, but I just like, that's a big thing to me and very important. And then the last piece is, we're a branding group. So whether you're an individual, whether you're a brand, a large, Fortune 100 company, Alicia Keys, we basically build collectives, or myself, I build collectives of freelance talent from across the space, top talent, based off of the client's objectives, right? So whether you need social media manager, paid media management, a CRM system built plus an e-com site built, right? Versus creative and actual production, commercial, social content. I'm able to pull in all these talented people from my warm network who are interested in doing either side hustle or full time. They're full time freelance at this point, or even working with boutique agencies. And basically creating that full service approach and full service package. But what you're doing is you're dealing with the main touch points. You're dealing with the experts versus when you work with an agency, they're going to put 6 to 7 people on that account. You're
Yep.
going to have that VP that comes into the pitch who's going to basically say whatever the client wants to hear. And then the client's going to come to them and say, these are my main priorities. I
Mhm.
need you to make sure this gets done. And then the VP tells the director, right? And then the director tells the manager. The manager tells the actual junior
Yep.
employee who's actually implementing things. And so many things get lost in the cracks and in those conversations. And the VP then, has a conversation with the client. Client's like, what happened? What's
Yeah.
going on? And it's just bad for business.
Right.
It hurts the brand, and it also hurts the agency. And it's so important that I think, I believe success comes when both people are winning.
Yes.
You need a true partnership. Um, and what I basically am trying to build is the sense that, like, you have that one person who can handle all 6 of those jobs, right? We're in an entrepreneurial life and world today, where, if you're a paid media manager, you can run search ads, you can run paid social on Facebook and Instagram. You should be able to do it all. Social
Yep.
media, same thing. You can do organic on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is. You understand the strategies and the foundations of those platforms. So for me, it's taking that approach versus, building out these bloated teams and having, as I call it, fluff, and or too much, fat. And for me, that's kind of, again, like, I just think my business is kind of, the way I built it is focused on the future. And I always want to be, as I said earlier, with social media, I was able to get ahead of that. Now I want to get ahead of this next generation, which I'm thinking bigger, which is an actual business model and like the structure of the
Mhm.
industry and how to possibly move the needle, when it comes to brands working with, businesses. Advertising is getting more and more important today than it ever has been, right?
Yep.
More mediums to spend money on. There's more attention on your phone. Thanks Steve Jobs for that. But it's, the time that you're spending on these devices is astronomical compared to, like, our parents. You would have a phone call, I don't know, like maybe once a week. Even when I was growing up, my mom would talk to her friends, but it was a phone call maybe once a week. Today, I'm talking to my buddies all day, every day over texting. So your connection to that device is so important, and that's where all the people's attention, users' attentions, is today, and that's where it is. And it's like you got to follow them. I
Mhm.
think that's also the other piece of it is, in businesses. I used to say, Michael Jordan had to go to Nike back in the '80s, right, and sell himself to Nike and say, "This is why you should be working with me." It's the complete inverse today,
Yep.
and that's kind of where I'm envisioning things going. As I build my business, my freelancers build their business. So for me, it's like if we're all building, we're all growing, then we'll all be successful.
Right. It's interesting how you talk about too the agency versus the individual freelance options, because that's sort of why I've shifted to just being myself.
Yeah.
It's not me and a team anymore. One reason was because I realized I'm not the best manager, and it wasn't fun for me. It took away from my everyday joy and joy for the job and productivity. But on the flip side of it, over and over and over again would athletes come to me saying that they wanted to talk to me about me doing their brand direction and saying, hey, like, would I be working with the team or would I be getting you? I'm like, well, you'd be getting me. And their biggest complaint every time was that they signed with an agency who promised them all this stuff. They went into a boardroom. They were super impressed. Here's the team that's going to work on you. We've got our art department. We've got our accounting. We've got all these other people that are going to be helping you out. Like, you've got a squad. But at the end of the day, the squad would go to Tom Brady. It'd go to Mike Trout. It'd go to the stars
Right.
that whatever agency had signed, and
Hmm.
not these guys that were signing on that were maybe mid tier or low tier as far as popularity went. Those guys were
Yeah.
getting pushed to the side, but still having to pay for their time and work. So they weren't getting results, and they didn't feel like they mattered. And that's what I really realized. What my athlete clients cared about was they just wanted to feel like they mattered. They wanted
Right.
somebody working on their stuff. And the more I started thinking about it, it's like, gosh, like, these agencies are charging these big fees to work with them, and yet they don't actually have the best people in the world doing each of these roles. There's no way they can. They can't afford to hire the best people. There's no way that the owner of the agency can afford to hire you and plus everybody else that is great at every position you don't cover. You
Right.
know, so that's where I looked at it. I was like, gosh, like, why don't you just freelance and work with those people, accept what you're good at, accept what you're the best at, and make sure that your clients get the greatest results by you not being selfish. Because that's really what the agency comes down to, is being selfish. It's
Yep.
it's saying, hey, here's everything we got, and we want to accumulate as many clients as possible and give you what we can.
Right.
You know,
It's I completely I couldn't feel you more with that. It's they come in, and even today it rubs me the wrong way where these agencies come into these smaller startups and they're just like, give me. They won't even have discussions with the company without saying you need to give me a percentage of equity in your business. And that to me is just like the rudest thing you could potentially do to someone. It's like that's their baby. They built this from the ground up. They're looking for partnership. You need to earn their trust. You
right,
need to earn, like, there are just specific business values and ethics that I believe in truly. And the agencies, to your point, they just puts a sour taste in everyone's mouth, and that's why guys like us, and I admire what you're doing with athletes, man. I know we've spoken briefly on it in the past. I mean, more in depth, but also, over time, I'm even more interested. And I always follow your journey. I'm always following your post, as you know.
likewise.
Um, and it's one of those things that athletes today have an opportunity to really, like, they can say whatever they want. They have an opportunity today where their platform can be as big as they want it to be and
Mhm.
as big as they want to make it. And yes, it costs money at times, but it also, to your point, and I know you're a big believer, is storytelling, and just them just putting out, for you, for me, kids who grew up wanting to be professional athletes, who love the sport and taught, till this day, sports taught me everything in life,
Yeah,
almost everything in life. And it's something that, being able to articulate it as an athlete, the media has always, wrapped their head around athletes as they need to be these superhuman figures and this and that. But realistically, they're just human beings. And I think today, Kevin Loves of the world, it's so important to get these messages out there
right.
and tell these stories. My question for you, if you don't mind answering, is, so far in your business, what has been sort of, not necessarily your favorite, because I'm sure you love all the clients that you work with. Um, it's more of like, what story kind of drew you in the most, right? What kind of, you were listening to this guy, you thought he was this, but then the next thing you know is you hear this story and it's completely inverse to what you actually were expecting. Have you ever been kind of that taken back and been so surprised? Not to just drop this on you, but just wondering, because I can imagine, these guys have been through so much, especially the amount of, and the volume of athletes you've worked with.
In a lot of different ways. Yeah. Um, and not just with one athlete either. Cause I mean, like there's one, I won't mention his name, but he went through the ringer and just over these last 2 years and just completely self-destructed, and when I was working with him, he was building himself up at the top of the world. We launched a merch line with him that just blew up, um, it was interesting to kind of watch happen because as things were blowing up for him, I'm I see the side of him who was very motivated, very nice, like confident, spoke eloquently, and then over 2 years, like I'm out here defending him when people are saying stuff about him, but then to see everything kind of come to light as, gosh, like I think everything that people are saying about him is true because he's proven it time and time again now.
Right.
And it was interesting because I think that what happened to him was more so my assumption is CTE. My assumption is that he's and it sucks to say, but he's taken a few hits to the head,
Yeah.
because his everything changed. But it sucks. I look back and it's like, gosh, like when I saw him on the field, he seemed like the super cocky guy. He seemed like somebody who wouldn't really care to talk to me that much, wouldn't care to to be engaged or participate himself in the actual campaigns that we were doing. But he was fully engaged, excited. He wanted to do it all himself. He wanted to build his brand to be him, you know.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that changed over the years to the point to where it just was complete self-destruction. But he was one of those that was a really pleasant surprise initially. Then there's on the other side of it too, like there's cool stories and stuff with guys like, I mean, Scooter Gennett, I knew him for a few years, baseball player.
Mhm.
I didn't know what to expect. I just thought he's a cool guy, really nice guy, really high energy, you know. He is, whenever he'd come out to my spring training event, he'd like always participate in the fundraising. Like one year that was a really cool surprise is we did a live auction for the first time. We had Adam Richmond from Man vs. Food up there doing the emceeing and the auctioneering, and Roberto Clemente Jr. up there giving away a tailored suit, and
That's
like
awesome.
we had some cool stuff happening at it. And we started the auction too late. Most of the guys usually leave around 8:30 to 9. The players do
Mhm.
at the spring training event. And we started at like 9:15 because people kept pulling Adam away, like to get pictures. Adam was late on stage every time. Like it's not his fault at all. Like he was getting pulled away by people, and he was just being a personable guy. You know, he's
He
an
was just
awesome
trying
guy.
new dishes, man.
He was. That's
Trying
right.
the new dishes.
And it delayed the start of the auction. Like every player was gone but two. And so everybody that was left was like fans. Like we had this $10,000 cruise that was being auctioned off. This custom tailored suit by Roberto Clemente Jr.'s line. He would go fly out there and measure you at your home for it. Adam threw in the pot that he would go make dinner for you while he's getting measured, and they would both fly out to you. There was a bunch of stuff. Tickets to a Chris Stapleton concert, Florida Georgia Line guitar, I think it was. Like there's a bunch of stuff, but it comes down to it. Like to start the auction, nobody's really donating, and people aren't bidding. Stuff's being given away almost for free, like $200-300. Like somebody got I think it was Nick Lowry, the kicker for the Chiefs, former kicker for the Chiefs. I think he got the cruise for like $800 or something like that. It was any cruise in the world of a
Right.
Carnival cruise line.
And then the value is 10 grand.
Yeah, it's a $10,000 value. And so
What we call a
Scooter,
bargain.
that's right, right. And Scooter's hammered, you know. Like when he has fun, man. Yeah, that's what I love about him. He goes all out on everything. And he's hammered. And he like starts feeling bad and starts bidding on everything. And I asked him at the end of the night, he's like, man, did you really want like all that stuff? He goes, no, dude. He goes, people weren't bidding. He goes, I wanted to make sure that people were bidding and at least the stuff was being sold. And so he left with like concert tickets that he couldn't go to. He gave them to a buddy, you know, and a couple other things. And like that was one of those things where there were other players there still that didn't bid, you know, and players that left that knew the auction was coming up, that we'd announced that there hadn't been much raised yet for the night. And Scooter stuck around. And not only did he stick around, but then he bid. And then he did it the next year too. He's buying raffle tickets. And that's not to say there weren't other players doing that. I'm just putting him out on blast for it. But he was like this really, really pleasant surprise of a guy that when you have all these other guys that had way bigger contracts, so much more money. You know, Scooter was a cusp guy at the time. Like he's a free agent right now still. It sucks. He shouldn't be, but he is. But he's the guy that's out there spending the money, that's out there trying to help the cause, that's out there trying to help out me and my event. And so he was like this really, really cool surprise, like that I feel forever like indebted to, you know. And then the other one, I guess, this one would probably be more up what you're looking for, is Trevor Bauer. Trevor was a guy that had a really bad rap, you know. Players didn't seem to like him when I bring him up to other players, and but they didn't know him. Yeah, that's what every player that would say something negative about him would admit. They'd be like, yeah, I don't really know him. I just don't like how he carries himself. Seems like he knows everything better than everybody. He seems cocky, you know. And then the more I got to know Trevor, I'm realizing he's not cocky. Like maybe a little bit, but it's not this in your face. It's not anything more than other players. It's just that he doesn't know how to hide it like other players do. You know, and his facial expressions, like he's awkward, but he's not cocky. He's not a jerk. Like he's really nice to people. He's very honest. He's very straightforward. Like I feel like if he was in New York, he would be loved. He would he would
I
struggle.
completely I
But
agree with that. I don't want to cut you off, but like I completely agree in the sense of like, some people that are so transparent and honest, people
yeah,
take it as cocky,
right,
and it's not always cocky. It's just more of like, let's just get down to business. Let's
right,
just be real with each other. Let me tell you the truth. And some people can't necessarily handle that truth,
exactly.
and digest it and absorb it and let it, not take over their body and their emotions,
Yeah,
and just have an actual conversation with the person. But
yeah.
continue. I
No,
completely believe in that
I'm
too.
I'm big on people that show up, that consistently show up. They're the ones that I really see that like I can count on, that put in the effort, that care, that make you feel like you matter. And Trevor has showed up to every spring training event since day one, all 7 years. He hasn't missed a spring training event. Even when like Duke was playing one year during the event, man, he's this diehard Duke fan, like diehard. And
I
I
am too, not gonna
are
lie.
you? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, big dude fan. JJ Redick was just the guy for me.
Those were the
I
days,
just
man. Jay
I love
Will and
Coach K.
yeah,
Sheldon Williams,
yeah,
center.
yeah,
They had squads. Chris Duhon.
yeah, man.
We can go on for days, but continue.
But yeah, no, Trevor's a diehard Duke fan, and I texted him. I said, "Hey, man, you coming tonight?" And because he said he was coming a little while ago, and then I hadn't heard from him, and we were trying to do this autograph signing thing for the charity that night, and he goes, "Man," he goes, "I don't think I can make it." And I was like, "Oh, are you serious? Why? What's going on?" And he goes, "Oh, it's the Duke game tonight because I can't miss it." And the World Baseball Classic was also happening. So the guys, like other players, had requested that the World Baseball Classic be played during the event. And so I was like, shoot, like, how the guys want to watch this USA versus Japan, I think. So there's another huge conflict. And I was like, the guys want to watch this game. He goes, man, he goes, all right. He goes, I'll come. He goes, you just got to realize it's a really, really big deal, though, for me to miss this game. And it's March Madness. It's Duke. It's a
Right,
big game. He doesn't miss a game all season. This is March
right.
Madness. And so when he got there, he made sure there was a TV on with the Duke game. He literally just sat there and watched up above next to the pool table by himself. Most people didn't even know he was there, but he showed. He just chilled and watched the game. He showed. He made sure that we knew he was there. And like to me, that's somebody that shows that they care. Like they care about the friendship. They care about helping out. Like it's not a me guy. And he's labeled as a me guy, and he's absolutely not. He's absolutely not. And in some ways, he is because he does want to show up and whatnot, but he cares to win. He
Right,
doesn't just show up and collect a paycheck.
right.
He shows up and does his own thing because he's got his own routines. He doesn't want to be bothered during his routines. Like I get that. It's his personality. But he's there to win. He's there for the team. And it shows off the field how much of a team guy he is.
Right.
So
That's true love. I think that, back to the point, you can't be taught that. You need to know, it has to be in you to show up. You need to, no one, yeah, someone could push you, your wife, your mom, your friends, they can always tell you what to do. Like, as they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it.
yeah,
Um, I firmly believe in that, especially as I've gotten older and, trying to help friends, whether it was in college or getting jobs, and kind of motivating them to do things. But at the end of the day, you can push them so far. They have to
right,
want it for themselves. And, that in itself, him doing those things also, you're going to talk about Trevor. I'm going to talk about you, right? He obviously feels that connection and that bond. And not only the reason he's showing up is because you're always showing up, and it's mutual, and that to me is, it's a compliment to your character. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily, it's because it's humbling, right? You want to be humble. You also don't want to toot your own horn, but at the same time, and I fall into this trap too. It's just you don't want to recognize that because you don't want to fall into the trap of ego and cockiness and things like that we mentioned earlier. Um, but it's just truly, at the end of the day, it really is just a compliment, and it's showing him, you're seeing that, but it's a reflection of what you're doing too. I truly believe in that. And showing up is not easy. And as you get older, you realize that showing up is so much more important than it used to be when we were
right,
kids.
right.
Because everyone has so much shit going on,
Yep.
and life gets harder as you get older, more responsibilities, more problems, and as Biggie used to say, "Mo money, mo problems," right? But like I never. It was just an amazing song growing up, but then I realized, wow, like
Yeah.
there's so much truth to this, and
Yeah.
there's a reason why people always say this. Um, but even with those problems, those issues that come up, if you stay true to yourself and you do those things where all you have to do is show up,
Yeah.
that's part of it. But to your point, what you just mentioned, not only does he show up, but he's also doing his job to the best of his ability,
Hmm.
and he's also doing it his way.
Yep.
And I will always applaud that no matter what, because no one knows you better than yourself.
Right.
No matter what anyone tells you, you know yourself better than anyone, and you need to learn and gain that self awareness of what are those things that are going to make you tick. What are those dark points? What are those things um, that put you in that dark space? Stay away from that, right?
Yeah.
Like stay in the light, and it could be hard to like not draw yourself back into it, but catch yourself, right?
Yeah.
And the more you catch yourself and understand and are self aware of what that is that lives in that dark place, it allows you to think and only look into the light and kind of focus just into the light and stay more focused.
Right.
Which in my beliefs is like your strengths and things that will push you to be the best person you can be. Um, and to me, that guy, and I mentioned earlier, like that was Kobe. Like Kobe to me is from a basketball player perspective. Um, he was always looking to better himself, and when he passed, I felt the whole world kind of came to a standstill for 2 days. Like people could laugh at me, but it felt it wasn't as extreme. Listen, as 9/11. 9/11 was crazy, right? That was so
Right.
terrible, and you that for a year. You still feel it today. Um, but it's lost at the end of the day, and it's this impact. And Kobe, for me as a sports fan, it was for me like I didn't even know the guy. I just watched him grow up, and I
Hmm.
just idolized him and admired his will to always want to be the best and
Yep.
his will to like always show up. And Steve Stout said this yesterday. Again, I was watching the shop on Uninterrupted, and he's like, he's the first guy. He's like, I always had heroes that were older than me that I looked up to. He's the first younger guy that taught me what work was
Mm.
and like how to do work. And I was like, I was so taken back by it, but it was the truth, like there are people like that. I admire younger people. I admire some guys that have that work ethic. Whether you're an athlete, whether you're a business person, um, yeah, their competition to some extent, but your competition, like I mentioned earlier, is what's going to make you better. And kind of embracing that rather than being angry about it is important. And I think Kobe was that guy where it was like, I don't care who you are, what you do, what you say to me. I'm gonna perform the best. I'm gonna beat you. I'm
Right.
a winner, right? And nothing kind of got to him. Yeah, there are things that probably got to him, and but he'll never tell you that. He'll never show it. And it's that Mamba mentality. I know I've mentioned him a couple times, but for me, um, he was just a big figure and a public figure in my life that I really tried to implement. And for me, also with sports, right? On the topic of sports and building platforms and a voice for athletes. You never really heard Kobe speak when he was playing. The media brought him out to be this guy who was always, he was selfish, he was angry, there were so many things. He was a problem at all times. But then when you actually heard him speak after his career, right? And this is what I tell everyone. Like, I am so thankful that podcasts and interviews and the internet, or not internet, but social media came out when it did,
Yeah.
because we are so lucky to have 4 to 5 years of Kobe speaking about his career, how his brain works, his
Hmm.
mentality, and we will always have that, to always look back on and to always learn from. And there are so many people from back in the day that our parents probably had heroes, Mickey Mantles of the world, that you don't really have those stories.
Right.
You're not able to connect and hear how they thought to help empower you. And Kobe, I was watching his podcast so frequently, especially running your own business. There's so much going on. There's so many problems that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, there's always, there's good, but there's also bad. And he kind of um, reaffirmed there's just the mentality of you always need to move forward, right? You
Yeah.
always got to push forward. You guys, and then on top of it, to kind of circle back, is you have to be your best self. You need to better yourself. You need to make sure that you are becoming the best person you could possibly be and potentially be. And that's what I took so much from when he passed, was that, this superhuman who did everything perfectly. Like,
Right.
why does he go, right? And only, the line is only the good die young. And I learned that at a young age. And, what it teaches you is life is short, and you need to do whatever you can, in the time you're here, to like be the best person you could be, but also fulfill things that matter to you, not just the money, not just the house, the fancy dinners, but, giving back, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experiences, with the younger generation, older generation, right? I think it works twofold, because people today, the young kids, they're so well connected on the internet and things that are going on so quickly, that they can help the older generation understand it. Where a lot, the older generation, they don't like learning new things, but at the same time, they should be working with the younger generation,
Right.
and helping each other out. And there are just so many things that you can learn from each other. And yeah, it's that Kobe stuff hit me hard, but it really, I took it. You try to take the bad and turn it into not good, because you'll never get any good out of that, but to help better yourself and to help you kind of grow.
Yeah.
And his words of moving forward.
That's Kobe's an interesting topic for me too, just because I became a Clippers fan because I hated the Lakers so much when I was a kid. And I didn't like the Blazers growing up in Oregon. At the time, they're the Jail Blazers. And
Yeah,
so, like, even Oregonians weren't
those
proud of the
Darius
team.
Miles days, like
That was like Rasheed and Dame Lillard
Bonzi
and
Wells.
Bonzi. And yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Darius was on the Clippers during those days. Um, yeah, that was Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson and Mike
yeah.
Olowokandi, Lamar Odom on the Clippers. But
Shout out to Knuckleheads.
there you go, there you go. But I hated Kobe. Like I just did not like him. Like as much as you could hate somebody you don't know, like as a sports fan, like I hated Kobe. And the reason why is
Great.
because I thought that he was just a whiner, a flopper, a complainer, But at the same time, like looking back, I also didn't like the comparisons to Michael Jordan. And I was a huge Michael Jordan fan as a kid. And then as he kept playing, got later in his career, I started liking to watch his games because I didn't look at it as whining and anything anymore. My mentality changed to where I saw it as, God, this guy's so competitive and so consistently competitive. And he cares so much and he tries so hard. It's so much to watch this. But for me, it was this consistency that Kobe had that won me over. And once he retired, I became this huge fan of his business wise, and his outlook on the game and his outlook on business. And I'm watching him thinking, God, this guy's going to transform how business is done in sports. This guy's going to be a multi-billionaire at multiple companies. He's just going to blow up and change how business is done in sports. And then he comes back after his hiatus away from basketball pretty much in the public eye outside of business. And then he's just with Gigi. And now I'm watching him like go to these games. They keep showing him consistently the weeks before he died at basketball games with his daughter, and they're showing him like pointing things out and like going over plays it looked like, and I'm watching this thing. Gosh, this is so cool! Like they're in New Jersey now, they're in LA, and like they're going to games all over the place, and you can tell he really cares. And I see that he's coaching her team, and I start like thinking about it, like, gosh, like this is the kind of dad that I want to be. And I remember thinking that like before he died. I don't know how long before, but I remember thinking that. And then all the stories after he came out, like, because I remember, like you said, the day that he died, that's an easy one to remember. I feel like for a lot of people, just because the shock and disbelief. I remember standing in the room with my fiance and we're like looking at the TV thinking like, there's no way this is real. Like TMZ broke the news. Come on. There's no way. And we're looking all over, and then it starts becoming more real and more real. And all these stories over the weeks after, showing his relationship with Gigi. It's crazy. I've never talked about anything on my vision board before, but like I redid my vision board, and that's something that I have on there. This guy that growing up I completely despised to the point to where I became a Clippers fan, thinking that when 8-year-old me is thinking that that's the Lakers' biggest rival. It wasn't. Me thinking that. And that's what forced me. And also, I just wanted to root for the underdogs and didn't want to root for the Blazers. But becoming a Clippers fan out of hate for Kobe, and now I've got wanting to be like Kobe on my vision board. Like I wanted to be a dad like Kobe. I wanted to have my kids there and support them for whatever it is that they wanted, that they were passionate about. Like Kobe didn't want to be at those games until Gigi did. Like Kobe, he publicly said that he didn't want to go to basketball. He wasn't going to be around basketball anymore. But Gigi wanted to go to the games. She wanted to learn from him, and that's what got him back out there. So if it was chess, if it was video gaming, like I think he would have been there doing the same thing. Then you hear these stories about him calling up Michael Jordan and everybody else asking for tips. What were you doing at 13? You know, he would have done the same thing no matter what she was trying to be great at. And that's so inspiring to me, you know, so inspiring. So it's cool to see like something like that. And it's just sports, you know, like when you look at it from a fan perspective. At the end of the day, like that's the legacy that Kobe ended up building, was this legacy of grit, of selfishness and selflessness. You know, he was super selfish on the court and competing and building himself, you know, when it comes to trying to have an edge over people. But at the same time, he was incredibly selfless. Like he'd help people out, you know, when it didn't have anything to do with competing with him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what was so cool about actually learning about the guy. Like you said, we wouldn't have gotten to learn those things about Mickey Mantle or anybody else, you know.
Mm-hmm. No, that was beautifully said, man. You know, and he's like, I don't know if there's ever been anyone who's been, you know, not necessarily the villain, but to your point about so selfish but so selfless
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. And I think the only way that you can be that way is if you are so content in who you are and in your own body, and know like at the end of the day, this is your goal. And just, you know, he understood, to you know, to what I was saying, of being the best person he could be, and he understood what it took to get there.
Right.
And you know, that to me is so crazy, because think about how many people out there are just talking about how selfish he was his entire career, and then he steps away. And even during his career, he was selfless.
Yeah.
He was going to visit kids, but he just didn't tell anyone about it. He would tell his publicist,
Yeah.
"This better, you can't tell anyone. Like this can't get out. I don't want
Yeah.
anyone to know." But he was visiting these sick kids. Like he was doing so much, you know, and all he really cared about was that one-to-one connection with that person that he was in, you know, impacting. And I think that in itself can teach anyone a lesson of, you know, putting your story out there. And okay, what if, you know, you don't need 300,000 people to like it, but if you have one or two people that are you know, impacted by what you just said, and then that changed the trajectory of their career, you just impacted a life. You changed someone's direction, you changed their way to better themselves. And you know, it starts one at a time. And I think people always forget that, especially in the world of social media today, due to, you know, inflation of numbers and likes and engagements and things like that. They forget how important that human touch element is, and just, you know,
Right.
sharing your truth. um, it's so valuable. But yeah, that's, yeah, great guy, man. You know, and just for us growing up, we're just lucky to kind of to be able to witness it, and just, you know, be able to see it. Which truly, it was awesome.
Right.
And I do want to step away from the Kobe piece, even though, you know, I
Yeah.
love him. Is I want to move back on topic around something that I wanted to ask you, because you know you're big in sports, in the sports world, and it's something I'm passionate about at the moment. Want to get your take is, you know, with the production of sports and sporting events, right? Stadiums over the years have just been getting bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
and you know, these teams aren't able to fill out their stadiums, right? They're not able to sell the tickets. Madison Square Garden, I still don't know how today, are, you know, charging, you know, like $5,000 a ticket for courtside seats, like 20 grand a ticket for courtside seats, right? Like ridiculous amount of money being spent on these tickets, and the team is awful.
Right.
But my point being is, you know, do you think that these stadiums are going to get smaller and smaller over time, and it'll become more intimate at the sporting event? And then on top of that, with just social media and the internet, and being, you know, like the connection across digital and streaming services, things like that, will are they going to take the production to the next level? You know, are they going to have mics on all the players? Are they going to have cameras at all the different cool angles? Right? In baseball, they moved that little camera to under home plate so you can see underneath the batter. That was cool and new. You know, over time, do you feel like that stadium's going to shrink, but the equipment and the technology around the game is going to obviously improve, which will make the game more exciting. It depends on who you are and how you
Mhm.
view it. Um, but in some eyes, more exciting and more intimate, where you're getting to actually hear these players talk during the events. And I know we spoke briefly on this for the ESPN piece. Um, they're testing these things out with Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant. It was really cool to see what they were doing in the spring training game when they mic'd their
Yeah.
guys up. So, I'm very into this, the evolution, I would say, of sports, and where the world's headed. But I want to get your take on where you think that is going to kind of pan out over the next, I would say, 10 to 15 years.
It's a fun topic. No, it is. Because it's interesting because I've got this kind of perspective on it that I don't know if it's absurd or not, but I think that the way that sports gambling is going right now, that is going to have a big advantage for in stadium opportunities. And the way that I look at it with stadiums right now, absolutely, like the seating needs to shrink the way that opportunity online is going.
Mm-hmm.
Because with virtual reality and all these opportunities to actually feel like you're at the game, the better technology gets, the more interactive that it gets, the less appealing going to the game, the whole process of being stuck in traffic, getting there, paying $30, $20 for parking. To take your family, you're looking at between 50 and $120 a piece, depending on how big your family is, you're pushing $300-$400 just there, and then food and beverage, and that's not even to have this up close experience. So virtual reality is to the point to where you can sign on for subscriptions and have seats courtside where you feel like you're there. Then it's going to create a different experience. It'll never take away from the feeling of actually being at the game, the smells, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But
the squeaks.
Exactly. But I think that what will be taken away is having more opportunity to see these games and actually have a close sense of that experience. And that'll be enough to get the non-diehard fans, the fair weather fans, to not go to games anymore, or at least not go to them very often enough that there's a lot of empty seats open. But what I think that will drive kind of the future of stadiums is betting and other, not in-game, but in-arena entertainment. So having opportunities to actually be involved in the game, while it's happening. It's going to be that feeling of being around people, being around fans. That's going to have to be the sales point, is getting to be around like-minded people that are diehard Knicks fans, But if the Knicks aren't winning and people don't need to go to games to watch the game and see it and experience it, then there needs to be something else driving you there. And I think that's where it needs to be other kind of entertainment. It's going to be betting opportunities, other ways that you feel like you're actually involved. Like the Dallas Cowboys, what they did with having that their fan experience with actually being able to be there, like when guys are getting carted off the field and stuff, and seeing the guys come through the locker rooms. Yeah, I think that stuff is gonna be more involved in new stadium build outs. It's fun to talk about this stuff just because there's so much opportunity to really expand the way that sports are viewed, but interaction with the player, I think, is the only thing that can't be 100% taken away from an in-game experience. You can't go get a high five. You can't go get an autograph, in person when you're watching from home. So how do they double down on those experiences of being around fans, being able to have personal interaction with players, and the sights and smells? Those are really the three things that you can't completely take away from the in-game experience, right? Old timers, they like there is some nostalgia about going and parking and getting the popcorn, standing in line,
tailgating for 11 hours,
right? Right. There is that nostalgia, and maybe tailgating is a piece that will end up getting brought back in heavily into it. I know football, it's still a big deal in certain stadiums. But I think that those are the pieces that need to be focused on the arena side of things. And really, really, like when you're planning out the next season and planning out your stadium build and all that, you need to see how can we completely enhance these three components so that nobody can say that watching in virtual reality is just as good as going to the game. It needs to be completely different experiences. How do you get the players more involved? Because miking up, it's making it more entertaining to watch at home. You can't hear that stuff at games. You know,
You can't, you know, unless you're sitting courtside paying 20 grand for that ticket.
right? Or you got a radio head cassette on, like, like, you know, you can't get that at games, and that's super. I've never seen anything like that where a guy is in and at bat talking through his head about what pitch he's guessing is coming and stuff. Like that's insanely hard. I can't imagine the players like fully taking that on in baseball. That'd be insanely hard to get that out of your head. But having some sort of component like that would change the game for at-home viewing. You know, and it's becoming more of a business than it is a sport.
Right. No, 100%. And I think, you know, everyone forgets about it, especially the younger generations, how important the human touch is.
Yeah.
Human touch element will always be the most powerful,
Yes.
you know, energy, spirit, whatever you want to call it, that will ever impact you, or that you'll ever feel. It's that human touch. And if you're watching it on VR, you know, on your couch, right? And I always talk about this. Me and my brother would always joke about it. You know, we're Jet fans, unfortunately. And you know, in December we want to go to. When we do have important games, every 10 years in December, we want to go. But you know, it's freezing, and we decide, you know what, we'd rather watch it on the big screen in our den and in the comfort of our home. And you know, to your point, I think that's just going to continue to become bigger and bigger.
Right.
But I still, till this day, you know, that young athlete who wants to be the next Kobe, LeBron, Michael Jordan, there is something to being in the arena at that moment, watching it in real time. It makes it more real. So, you know, I'm very interested in seeing how that plays out. And then my other question is on the sports betting, right? So like sports betting, that's a sensitive topic, man. That's a hard line. Like you don't want to cross over, but I think that they're moving in that direction because, you know, I'm not going to call it like, I mean, it is. It's like, you know, back in the day with tobacco and advertising, right? You're selling something that isn't, in my eyes, bettering people. It's not bettering the sport, and it's not, and it's not bettering people and like the things around the sport. I think it'll actually hurt it more than help it. Because you're going to be pushing people to dark places. They're going to be spending money that they shouldn't be spending on these things just to make a quick buck. And sports shouldn't be about that, right? There's always been, you know, the 1919 World Series or whatever with the White Sox, and you're always going to have fixed games, fixed events, especially, you know, back in the day, Tim Donahue, all those names. But now you're taking it to another level, you know, and I think it's something that they should still be very careful with, but I think they're just moving so quickly, so fast that, you know, the people up top see so much money coming in. How do we say no? You know, on that topic, what is your take on gambling and just, you know, that world becoming bigger and bigger?
It's interesting because the old timers that used to protect and still do try to protect the integrity of the game, that talk has become a lot less, in my opinion. The integrity of the game isn't something that you hear a lot of conversation about. And growing up in baseball, that's what I would hear a lot of conversation about, especially once the initial like ideas of let's speed up the game, let's make things less time consuming. When those talks started happening, that's all that people are saying. You're ruining the integrity of the game and all these. And now it's become so normal to talk about it. The integrity of the game conversation is out the window. And what it's done is it's allowed the businessmen to come in and have say. You look at Rob Manfred, the reason why players have no problem talking against the guy who is essentially the leader of their organization, it's the top of the food chain there. And they're calling this guy an idiot you know, and rightfully so in a lot of ways.
I was gonna say, can you blame him?
But he was hired not on behalf of the players. He wasn't hired to make the game better for the players, to make more money for the players. I think that that's where a lot of fans get the misconception here is that he was hired on behalf of business for baseball, for Major League Baseball, not the game of baseball, not the sport of baseball, not the integrity of baseball. He was hired to make Major League Baseball more money, more profitable, more valuable. By doing that, make the game more popular, not to appeal to baseball fans, but to appeal to people that want to spend money on baseball.
Appeal to their bottom line.
Exactly. And that's why he's got no problem throwing out these ideas that change the game, and that's where I think that sports betting comes in, is that the more that there's these types of mentalities, the business mentalities that aren't in tune with the integrity of the game mentalities, that's where I think that things are going to get worse before they get better. Things are going to have to fail, and Las Vegas is going to have to be an issue, before real restrictions get put into place. I don't see how the Raiders guys don't get caught up in betting. I just don't. When you're there you got the mafia guys out there and stuff, you got a lot of money being thrown around. You got people losing millions of dollars once that starts happening in Vegas. That's when players are going to start getting caught up. The guy that falls 1 yard short, the guy that fumbles the ball, I think that there's going to end up being some issues there. When it's not in Vegas, it's one thing,
Right.
But when it's in Vegas, when you've got all this cesspool of gamblers and gangsters and everything else, and you're living there and you're in the backyard there, and you got people that just lost their incomes, their livelihoods, everything, and it comes down to a play on a player that missed a 20-yard field goal, I think that's when things get really sketchy when it comes to gambling. But on the flip side of it, there's a lot of money to be made. I think that's where it's that whole GM debacle, when GM was putting gas tanks underneath the driver's seat and cars were blowing up. They had to take the stance of, okay, they didn't have to. They chose to take the stance where they looked at it and they're like, well, if we go recall all of these cars that are already out there and move the gas tanks, give everybody their money back or have to fix them all, then that's going to cost more money than if we just fight all the lawsuits and lose all these lawsuits. So screw it. Let's keep all the cars out. We'll take on the lawsuits. They said, screw everybody that gets blown up. We know it's going to blow up, but that's going to cost us more money, so we'll just go fight the lawsuits, stay in business. I think that's what the idea, or what the thinking pattern is with gambling right now. Let's get as much money as we can. This is going to be popular. It's going to blow up. The big issues are really not that big, really not that big when you got all this money that we're thinking about. Like, those will figure themselves out. It'll figure it out. And if it doesn't, then we'll already have made enough money to cover any problems that are there.
Right.
I feel like that's the mentality that's happening. So it's dangerous, but at the same time, I think it's inevitable to where gambling will become normal, but it'll have this lows to where it then flips and then has restrictions put in that allow it to be something that does fairly well.
100%. And it's so interesting because even in business, right, this is a prime example. Companies, when something's working, let's just hone in, double down, triple down, quadruple down on that one thing, and you move at a speed and a pace that is so fast. And the mentality to me is always more short-term gain than long-term. And rather than thinking long-term and slowly, patiently rolling something out, they get cash hungry. And instead, what happens is, to your point, right, they get to this point where shit hits the fan, they have all these issues, and they just have to blow it up. And now they need to rebuild it again. And it's kind of like, the Band-Aid on the cut. It's just like, you need to clean it. You want to make sure, or on the wound, right? You're just putting it on and you're not really dealing with the issue. And then how many Band-Aids could you put on before it's like, you know what, I need to go to the doctor and take care of this. Yeah. It's one of those things that in business, I always feel that mentality I don't know. It might be just the way I think. It's not the best way of, making things better. I think it's just, to your point, right? It's like you want to build something, you want to exit from your company and make the most money you can. But there are so many other risks that come into play when doing that.
Yeah.
You have to hire more employees. You have, more liability on your hands. You have investors you need to please. You're throwing more liability, more responsibilities on your plate, rather than thinking like, how can I build this up with, doing it the right way, correctly, and not impacting other people and not caring about how it impacts their lives.
Right.
And people I think just don't necessarily. I don't know if they don't care or they're just it's easier for them to kind of look the other way.
Right.
And with this, the commissioner of baseball, it's the Astros, right? I don't want to go too deep into it, but I think what he did was way too light, and I said it from the beginning with my brother, and my brother made a good point, and it's like you can't just start with the union, and you can't just start suspending players
Yeah.
who are doing these things. And I'm like, why not? He's like, because you don't know who was doing it, who wasn't. I'm like, suspend everyone who played on the team for those 2-3 years, and you're making a real big statement, right? And listen, at the end of the day, it's probably not possible, but it's still something where like they're going to have this World Series banner. As a Yankees fan, I know a lot of Yankee fans are sour and bitter about it. I am too, but I also understand that like it's over. It happened. You're not going to get. I don't want that World Series.
Right.
That's tainted. You don't want to touch that. Who cares at this point? Now it's about moving forward, and these guys are just. I can't imagine. I don't wish this on anyone, but being a baseball guy and a pitcher growing up, how many guys are going to throw at them? It's going to happen more and more frequently. And then it's like the safety of the player, and it's just like, what are we doing to the game? All the fans are, I love it. So, I really do, because they deserve it. When you make a decision like that, and in life, if you make a decision, you have to deal with the consequences,
right?
No matter what it is. And they made their decisions, and you can do something. I was watching. It's funny. I've been watching these shows, McMillions on
Yeah.
HBO. I don't know if you watch it, but
Yeah.
You make these decisions, and you can do something. You can cheat for 3 years straight, but all it takes is getting caught once.
Yep.
And it all tumbles down.
Yep.
And that's what happened. And it's just, to me, it's I know it's a touchy topic, but it's, to me, I feel like he could have gone a little deeper, but to your point, it's business to him.
Yeah.
It's not about the integrity. It's not about that, and that, to me, I was raised the same way you were, right? It's about the integrity of the game, especially for me, as I said, basketball, golf, and I've learned so much about golf, and the integrity of golf. And it, like I said earlier, it's taught me life lessons, and just understanding the game and how people approach it.
Right.
And that's important. And to, share that with the next generation is very important. And for them to kind of just say, you know what, we're going to get rid of, we're going to suspend you. You're not going to get the, the coaches and the GM, but, we're going to fine you this amount. We're going to, you'll have an asterisk on your World Series title.
Yeah.
And then 10 to 20-year-olds who are playing sports right now, playing baseball, that want to play in the pros, you're basically saying, we'll look the other way. Right. And I don't think that's the right example to set.
He messed up.
But, yeah.
That's what it comes down to. He messed up. And that's where hiring somebody that doesn't know the game to lead your business, to lead your tribe, like, he should have known that there was possibilities of worst case scenario. He gave immunity to him because he thought that they were going to cough up everything and say, like, and it wasn't going to be that bad. And then the players' reactions wouldn't be that bad. That's what he thought. But you got to know the game. You got to know how big of a deal it is to cheat. That's where the integrity is lost, and that's where Manfred messed up. As far as I'm concerned, like, he looked at it and thought he had to have thought worst case scenario was that they cheated. How could you not? So you're going to offer immunity to tell me the truth, knowing that worst case scenario is that they cheated, and think that people aren't going to be up in arms about it when they won the frickin' World Series? Like,
Against, I mean, man, that Yankees team. I went to the playoffs. I was at that game in 2017, the ALCS in Yankee Stadium. It's every game at Yankee Stadium. Yankees won.
right.
What a coincidence, right? Like the home team won every game in that series. It's it's just one of
Yeah.
those. It's like it's there in front of you,
Right.
and you can't make that shit up. It's just gotta, you just gotta live it. You gotta see it, and it just happens.
And what makes it worse is that it's against the two biggest market teams in the country. Those are the fans that you're going to have to deal with by coming out and saying this team cheated. The Dodgers and the Yankees.
Such a great
Like,
point.
those are the fans that
It
suffered the
five
most.
X's it. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Especially, I mean, New Yorkers. You're never gonna hear the end of it.
Right.
Especially, I mean, with the Red Sox too, right?
Yep.
Boston. We're always gonna have that on them, and it's terrible because realistically, like they've been amazing
Yeah.
since '03. Like as a Yankee fan, they've done things the right way with Theo Epstein coming in, changing the way that that team was ran. Terry Francona, um, that that Red Sox like organization, they were setting an example to the
Yep.
league, and then for this to happen, not a good look,
No.
and
No.
it's something that I think and I hope the Yankees have never done it. I think they're too classy of an organization. I also don't want to be I'm not blinded by just being a big fan. Like if they did do it, I would have issues. I mean, the I always look back at there's one guy who will always stand out to me, and the fact that he wasn't anonymous in the sense of with the Hall of Fame, he didn't get 100% of the votes was Derek Jeter. This guy was living in the steroid era. He basically said, "I don't need that. I will never treat, and I have the integrity, and pride and self pride of
Yeah.
knowing that I don't need that to better myself and to become the best player I can be because I'll regret it."
Right.
And that in itself, that regret and that guilt goes a long way.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know what it came down to, and I learned this last year: his parents, his foundation,
Yeah.
and I was lucky enough last year for at my bachelor party. I went to Vegas and I stayed at the Aria Hotel. And at that same time, the Turn Two Foundation had their golf invitational
Okay.
at Shadow Creek. So they were staying at our hotel, and I mean, man, fate. It was insane. I met Tino Martinez, Johnny Damon,
Oh man.
and then coming home from dinner one day, Derek Jeter, and then the morning we're about to leave the hotel, and I want to, um, I need to add also, right? Like my dad passed when I was a kid. Derek Jeter was my idol growing up. I watched every Yankee game. They were it for me. Like I loved the Jets, but the Yankees were everything.
Yeah.
And they always to me reminded me of just like my parents. They were just genuine good people and they cared about family. And they were quiet, humble, and respectful.
Yep.
And his dad, I looked up to him. I looked up to him because, to your point about Kobe earlier, I thought to myself, this is how I want to raise my kid.
Hmm.
The way that Derek was raised, the way he is. I want to be, because I'm idolizing Derek, but where did it come from? Where does it stem from, right? The root, like who is that guy? And it was his father,
Right.
and Charlie. And that morning I came down from my hotel room with my brother and my buddy Andrew, and we were going to play golf. And we were leaving. We were checking out of the hotel. We weren't going to be back at the Aria because we were going to the Venetian where all my friends were going to be when they were coming out. We went early, played some golf. It was phenomenal. But that day when we were leaving, about 10:30 a.m., it was just fate, man. It was crazy. One, before we get to the Jeter part, I get in the elevator with my brother and my good friend Andrew, and we have our golf bags on our back. And another guy gets in the elevator on the floor after us, and he says to us, "Oh, you guys are golfing?" We're like, "Yeah." He's like, "Where?" We're like, "At this course. It's called Reflection Bay." He's like, "No way. I'm playing there today. What tee time?" 10:15. We're 10:15.
Oh
He was
wow.
our fourth, and just
Wow.
walks into that room. So that in itself was like, whoa, like what's going on here? And then as soon as the elevator opens on the lobby floor, we walk out, and who's walking towards us? And the only way, and remember, we're big boys. My brother is 6'3", my buddy Andrew is 6'2", and we have our golf bags as backpacks, so we're blocking the entire way. There's no way you can get past us. And we see his parents, and at that moment, my eyes just lit up.
Wow.
And the mom spoke to my brother and Andrew for a good, 3, 4 minutes. She was a sweetheart. And then I pulled his dad to the side
Huh.
and I just opened up about everything. I was like, I just want to thank you. I'm sure no one really does this, and this might be weird to you, but your impact on me was, you were very influential in my life because I watched you and saw how you raised Derek and the impact that you had on Derek and the foundation that you set for him and how important that was, no matter where he was in life, how bad he was or how good he was in a game. He always knew that you guys were there to kind of take care of him and that you were his backbone. And being a young kid who lost his father, I always admired that. And yes, I love Derek and everyone loves Derek, but I also was looking at where did this come from? And it came from you. And it was like, for me, one of the most fulfilling moments of my life because
Yeah.
I was able to finally articulate and tell this man how much he meant to me. And you don't really always get that, and, Kobe was one of those people I was hoping to meet at some point, right? To be able to tell him the impact he had. And I was just so thankful because not many people are going to say, Charlie Jeter was, a role model for them. But for me as a kid, it was someone that I always saw. And as a kid who also didn't have his dad, I was thinking about the fact that he had his dad in that moment, right? And how he was always there. And that's what I would want. So that's what I'm going to be doing for my kid. Um, and that's where I learned it. And just meeting him, they always say don't meet your heroes. But for me, he was exactly who I thought he was going to be.
It's
He was
incredible.
just the most gentleman, like most generous, most genuine, and just so humble and just bubbly guy,
Right.
and he thanked me so like he was like, thank you so much. This means so much from the bottom of my heart. And then we walk outside, go to get a cab. They then walk past us and he gives us a head nod and said, hey guys, have a good day. Like, nice meeting you. Right. And you walk out. And that to me was, I don't know how big of an impact that had in his life, right? If he remembers it. But for me, I'm never going to forget that moment.
I'll
And it
bet he
was fate.
does.
The end of that bachelor party,
Yeah.
it was perfect. And I always say, like, there's always someone above watching over you, and making sure those things happen.
Right.
But that's when I realized, like,
Man.
integrity, all those things, it comes from someone, and it for me validates that family is always everything,
Yes.
and it's the most important piece, I think, in life, and having that backbone, having those people that are always going to be there for you. And back to the Trevor Bauer comment of just showing up. They're always there. They're always
Right.
showing up, no matter what's happening, the good, the bad, um, and even the shit you got to go through. But it's just growing pains, and it's family. So
Yeah.
no matter what it is, you love each other and you take advantage of it, and you enjoy each other's company as long as you can. And yeah, and for me, it's been, just kind of summarize and finish up here. It's just MMP Digital, right? Like, that make me proud, my grandfather. And that to me is something that I'm continuing to inspire to try to be, is what he created, this empire for his family. Now it's my turn.
Right.
And he's handing off the keys. He put me in this position. I need to take advantage of the position he put me in because I kind of have a head start versus him, like versus what he was in World War II. He was the captain of his ship, down in Japan, fighting in the war, for I don't even know, like two years, I want to say.
Wow.
And with my grandma who he was married to at the time, and it was just writing notes, and they would get their notes like once a month. Like that to me, he was with his my grandma and him have been together since 18 years old. They're 93.
Wow.
So I've been with my wife since we're 19. I'm 29 now. We're almost 10 years together. We did long distance in college, and the reason I was able to do that is because I understood the importance of having that person that means so much to you and that can be your soulmate or your kind of your backbone. And those things, I keep saying it, but family to me is everything, and I try to implement that in business, with partners and things like that. But
Yeah.
you can't teach it; you got to feel it, and that to me is the most important piece.
That's a beautiful place to wrap this up. Where can everybody connect with you and get to pick your brain further?
Yeah, so I mean, LinkedIn. One of my goals right now is being a thought leader, for my generation, and when it comes to entrepreneurship, social media, personal branding. I'm very big on LinkedIn, so connecting with me on LinkedIn, I connect with everyone. and if you reach out, I'll respond. Just give me some time, because messages on LinkedIn are crazy. On Instagram, MMP Dig. And yeah, I mean, you can always reach out on my email as well, jordan@mmpdig.com. I'm not, for me, it's reach out if you have any questions, want to chat. More than happy to answer them. Hop on a call, meet in person in the city. And would love to help if anyone's ever interested.
Well, Jordan,
I appreciate this.
I appreciate you showing up, man. Thanks for coming on. It's great to chat and pick your brain a little bit. I got 1,000 more questions for you.
We'll do this again, man.
Absolutely.
This was awesome, and I appreciate bringing me on. I've been a fan of yours and just watching what you've been building since we first started chatting a couple of years ago through Instagram. So I appreciate it. And continue doing you. Take care of Griffey over there. Make sure he's not taking down any other pills or Clorox wipes.
Yeah. See if we have to pump his stomach or not. Hopefully that was the gist of it.
That was the last. Exactly.
Oh, man.
But I appreciate it, man. This is awesome, and thank you for having me.
All right, brother. Anytime. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Talk soon.